But this is really the magic from Kate. All done with still images, except the little video part. Now look at the credits here. Isn't that cool? Think about all of the stuff that went into that to produce that. I mean, all the amount of time, but all the academics, all the content. Think about all the math that goes into that. Think about being able to tell that entire story digitally without a word, other than a couple little dialogue things in there. I think it's funny when he said it's finally over. I don't know if that's for the movie or that was for the project, because that was done. It was all still images. So he would set up the camera and he would film himself doing this, but then he would go in and he would edit and make stills of each of those. And so I was talking to Mark Banky about that, and we were trying to estimate how many still frames we'd have to make, and it would just be thousands. And so it's an amazing piece of expression and communication, and it's neat that up on YouTube because it's gotten lots of hits. And Josh has actually done radio interviews all over the place. Down in Tennessee, people saw it, and they posted it on their radio website, some crazy morning zoo show, and he called, had him call in and interviewed him and stuff. And so, the opportunities are boundless, and kids want to do this. A couple other shows that are really popular in the 8 to 13 crowd, as we get to see at our house a lot. iCarly, which is all about these girls and this boy that produce a web show. Now, I think the crew and writers of iCarly could use a little bit of digital citizenship brushing up. And I've actually used clips from the show as a what's wrong with using technology this way. So iCarly's doesn't get to get watched in our house a whole lot. But, nonetheless, it's kids creating. And then the other one is called Good Luck Charlie. And that's based on a girl who, she has a video blog that she's making for her little sister who's like 1.5 or 2 or something like that. And so, these are the things that kids want to do. And I'm part of the McCall leadership group. McCall is the Michigan Association of Computer Users and Learning, and they put on the great big fabulous conference every March. It's like the state ed tech group. And one of the things that we were talking about at our last meeting, we had a retreat in May just before school ended, is that there's an alarming rate of dropouts that are A students, that are these types of kids. They're not seeing the relevance, and they're not seeing the, why is this important? And it's really interfering with my real learning because I want to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm locked down at the high school for 6-8 hours a day doing that stuff. And so, it's both sides now. We've always had Bill and Ted dropping out, and there's been a million ways of trying to figure out why. But I see a new challenge in that whole idea of, keeping kids challenged. And you hear that from parents, well, the only reason you have any problems in your classroom is because they're not being challenged. Well, guess what? Today we're going to talk about all kinds of ways to, here you go, buddy. We're going to challenge you. So, let's see here. No, I'm sorry, I can't play words with friends right now. Close that. Let me connect to you. All right. Love this quote. Steve Jobs. In Apple's DNA, that technology alone is not enough. That it's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields us the result that makes our hearts sing. You would think that Steve Jobs, CEO of Apple, this was actually, he said this during the launch of the iPad 2. You would think that Apple would be all about future, future, future. No use for the liberal arts. I went to liberal arts college, a small college. We've got some Hillsdale College grads here today that I'm very proud that they came here. And you think of a school like Hillsdale, where we studied, we're reading about Greek mythology, the Iliad, and the Odyssey, and everybody's got to read the book of Job as a freshman. And studying the Constitution, and you take these art classes of this art from the Renaissance, and you learn about Da Vinci, and you think, oh my gosh, that's just so old school. But the point that Steve Jobs makes here, and if you think a little bit deeper, is that none of this is worth anything if we aren't teaching and using great content with it. Okay? We're gonna innovate in education, but we can't throw out the core. Because it's that core that allowed people like Edison and Henry Ford. It's that knowledge of the greatness, all the innovators of the past that teach us how to think and how to innovate. I hear some of these commercials. There's this one technology school that advertises on the radio station that I listen to, and the guy's like, well, I had no time for algebra, and I had no time for history and all this stuff. I needed a job now in the future. It's like, well, that's great. You can go there, and for some people, it's a great opportunity, especially with the economy being what it is. But you miss out on learning how the great minds in the past did it, because the great minds now and the great minds of the future kind of do it the same way. And so one of the kickbacks you get, or the pushbacks, when you start talking about innovation and educational technology, is this idea that, it's just technology. It's just technology. We're not going to, none of that old stuff matters. But when you go back to the great books, and you sit in an art class like I did, and sometimes it was hard to stay awake because it was right after lunch, I admit that, and you sit there and you watch these slides. And sometimes you don't realize, what you're learning. It teaches you so much more about the human experience in a meaningful way, as opposed to just learning the skill that, if you're lucky, that skill might keep you working and employed and going for the next 10, 15 years, or get you through a career. You've got to be able to think. And this is what has set Apple apart. Jobs gave the commencement speech at Stanford this year. And he said the best thing that ever happened to him in his life was when he dropped out of college. He said he dropped out of college formally, but he began to drop into classes. And so he went and he quit going to the classes on his schedule so he could start going to these classes that really interested him. And one of the things that he went to was a calligraphy class. What calligraphy? What's that going to, you learn how to write fancy, a career as an invitation for wedding engraver or something like that. But he said what calligraphy taught him was all these amazing things about the way the eye sees the world, the way the mind works, the way different typeset goes together. And he said those principles that he learned in that calligraphy class then led to the design of the Macintosh. And that the Macintosh operating system, which really revolutionized personal computing back in 1984, 1985, it was all based on all the things that he learned in these classes, like his calligraphy class, about how the mind works and the way the brain connects things. So there is a big place. You have to have core great content. We have to be studying the math and the physics and the great stuff of the past, and even the great contemporary stuff that's out there. One of the book series that I got hooked on this past year was the Percy Jackson series, and it's all about a contemporary kid who realizes that he's a demigod, that his dad's Poseidon and his mom's just this regular working lady in New York. And through the history of these books, he goes and he interacts with all these Greek mythological figures, but it's set in a contemporary setting. And I found out that a lot of my kids, 4th and 5th graders, were really into this. And their knowledge of Greek mythology by reading those books far exceeds anything that I got, even going through my Greek mythology class in high school. And so there is great content, but it's awesome if we can base it on the best.